After helping hundreds of families relocate to Northern Michigan, I've realized something that most people don't want to admit. The move to Northern Michigan isn't for everyone. There are some big lessons I've learned, things that can make or break your experience here. And if you're thinking about relocating to Northern Michigan, you're gonna wanna hear these things before you start packing. Hi, I'm Gino D'Angelo, a local Northern Michigan real estate broker, and I've helped over 600 families relocate into and out of Northern Michigan. Today, I'm going to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. The first lesson I've learned is the reason most people actually wanna move to Northern Michigan, the lifestyle. It seems like every time I have a conversation with a new buyer about relocating to Northern Michigan, the first thing that comes up is all of the activities they want to do once they get here. Typically, the motivating factor for people wanting to relocate to Northern Michigan is the lifestyle. Whether they want to be super active or live a little bit more of a laid back pace, there is truly something for everyone in Northern Michigan. In fact, I think the lifestyle is what truly sets Northern Michigan apart. We have tons of water, rolling hills, and beautiful countryside. And while there are a ton of things to do here, it is still a slower pace than most city areas. The happiest families I've worked with have totally embodied what it means to live in Northern Michigan. They picked out their favorite activities and built their life around them. Whether it's riding your bike on the Little Traverse Wheelway or skiing at the Highlands or Nubbs Knob, Northern Michigan is truly an outdoor paradise. Also, many of the people who relocate here full-time once spent part of the year here, meaning I've helped hundreds of people who have visited here or have had second homes or their families grew up coming to Northern Michigan eventually be able to relocate here full-time. The second lesson I've learned is that the seasons may surprise you. A lot of people have only visited Northern Michigan in the summertime or maybe a weekend trip around the holidays, but living in Northern Michigan year-round is truly a 4-season experience. We've got the beautiful yet busy summers, the picturesque falls, and the enchanting winters that can also hit you like a ton of bricks if you're not prepared for them. In fact, right after the lifestyle questions, we talk about winter when I'm talking to somebody who is relocating to Northern Michigan full-time. I often casually ask them, are you sure you're ready for Northern Michigan winter? And usually I get a little bit of a skittish maybe or resounding yes if they're a winter fanatic. Truth be told, surviving the winter in Northern Michigan is certainly possible. You just need a plan. And you might be wondering, what do you mean by having a plan? What I mean by having a plan is, how are you going to stay active? How are you going to deal with the snow, both driving in it every day and maintaining it around your house? And how are you going to survive without seeing the sun for months on end? Now, people constantly comment about how harsh the winters here are and how you should never buy a home in Northern Michigan specifically because of the winters. But I'm here to tell you, there is a large portion of us that actually love the winters in Northern Michigan. I love personally how everything slows down. I love skiing, I love drinking hot chocolate or coffee and watching the snow. And I love how an area that has Caribbean blue waters in the summertime completely transforms to a winter wonderland in the wintertime. In fact, I think the holidays are one of the most special times in Northern Michigan. Yes, even with the summer included. Each town looks like a Hallmark movie with Santa parades, tree lightings, and even downtown open houses. Families or individuals who lean into the winter lifestyle are the ones that actually thrive in Northern Michigan versus regretting moving here. The third lesson, and my personal favorite, is understanding home values. Now, yes, there is a price range and area for every budget in Northern Michigan. The key is understanding ahead of time what your money gets you here in Northern Michigan. Now, I've had a lot of people do the research, call me early on, watch our videos, and understand exactly what your dollar gets you in each area up here in Northern Michigan. I've had some others, unfortunately, come here with unrealistic expectations and be extremely disappointed. In fact, that is the reason I started making these videos, because I wanted buyers or potential buyers to understand exactly what they're getting into when thinking about relocating to Northern Michigan, and not just the positive Chamber of Commerce stuff, but the true reality of what relocating to Northern Michigan means. In fact, we talk about this a lot, but prices in Northern Michigan have doubled since COVID, meaning prior to 2020, the house that once cost $250,000 or $300,000 is now $500,000 or $600,000. Now, a lot of people think that as a realtor, that's a positive thing, but I'm here to tell you, I see it differently. Northern Michigan has become a lot more expensive than it once was. And that has really created the tale of two markets. Believe it or not, there is half of the population that thinks Northern Michigan is incredibly overpriced, and another half from around the country that thinks Northern Michigan is still a bargain. Now, you might be wondering, how can that be? The camp that thinks Northern Michigan is overpriced is the camp that's used to houses being much less expensive than they currently are. The camp that thinks Northern Michigan is undervalued is likely looking at other areas around the country with high quality of life, low crime, and great outdoor activity opportunities. If you compare Northern Michigan to other resort areas around the country, then yes, it is still a bargain. Drop a comment below. What do you think? Is Northern Michigan underpriced, overpriced, or appropriately priced? I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Another lesson I've learned about people relocating to Northern Michigan, either full-time or part-time, is that the job versus the work-life balance. A lot of people, specifically buyers who can work remotely, are choosing to do so in Northern Michigan because they love the idea of slamming their laptop shut at 5 p.m. and hitting the trails or jumping on their boat and cruising around the lake. In fact, remote work is one of the reasons real estate has been booming in Northern Michigan. Before, in order to live in Northern Michigan full-time, you had to find a job that could afford the lifestyle living in Northern Michigan, which, let's face it, can be hard. Now, if you're bringing your job with you from another area and you don't have to rely on the job opportunities available locally, it opens up Northern Michigan to a vast ocean of buyers. And it's not just the demand, it's also the infrastructure. Over the last few years, we've seen fiber optic internet and cell phone coverage expand across Northern Michigan. I remember not that long ago when having reliable internet or even cell phone service in a lot of areas was sketchy. Another lesson that I learned, and this one surprised me, is what actually matters to home buyers. Now, I always thought that prices, location, and that sort of thing were the paramount of how people made decisions. But I found out along the way that it's actually a collection of little things. How close am I to my kid's school? How close am I to the hospital if I'm thinking about retiring in Northern Michigan? Where am I going to get my car serviced? Is there a dealership for the brand of car I have? Where am I going to buy my groceries? And where is the best organic grocery shop in town? It has truly been interesting for me to see just what matters to people when they're thinking about relocating to a new area. And that's one of the things that I believe sets myself apart from other real estate agents, is I've helped so many people relocate to Northern Michigan that I know the tips and tricks and some things you may not even be thinking about when relocating here. And my job is to put that knowledge to use to make your transition as seamless as possible. In fact, I was recently working with a client who's relocating from Colorado to Traverse City, and they were worried if the movers could make it through the mountains in an attempt to get their possessions from Colorado and bring them back to Traverse City. A couple of phone calls later, and I was able to ease their concerns by finding one of our local movers who was ready for the challenge. Also, things like selling your house where you currently are and buying a house in Northern Michigan, and how to facilitate that process. And I'm here to tell you there's a number of ways. We're seeing more and more offers get accepted with home sale contingencies, which is ideal for somebody relocating here when you have a house to sell. Also, I like to get involved with my clients ahead of time. Too many times, people will call and say, Gino, I just accepted a job offer at the hospital and I need to sell my house now, but it is nowhere ready to be shown. I'm here to help you put a plan together to get your current house as show ready as possible so that you can confidently begin to look for new houses right here in Northern Michigan. And let's face it, relocating isn't just about buying a new house. It's about adopting an entirely new lifestyle. And I recently had a client tell me that buying a house in Northern Michigan isn't just buying a house. That house could become part of your family or part of your family's legacy oftentimes. A lot of the houses right here in Northern Michigan, specifically on the water, have been in the same family for generations. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, I'm here to tell you that could be a great investment over time. Some of these families who've bought these waterfront homes for $400,000 or $500,000 have seen those values skyrocket to multi-million-dollar homes. And of course, I'm biased, but Northern Michigan is incredibly special, and anyone who is lucky enough to call Northern Michigan home is, well, lucky enough. And if you're thinking about making a move to Northern Michigan and want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and check out my channels. We have videos covering almost every topic in every town right here in Northern Michigan. And if you'd like a private conversation, feel free to call me at 231-487-6141 or click the link in the pinned comment section and schedule a call with me. See you on the next video.